World War II became the most brutal conflict in human history. About 75 million people died during it, of whom 51 million were civilians. This war was marked by unprecedented cruelty, mass killings, concentration camps, strategic bombings of cities, and the use of new weapons of mass destruction. The scale of the destruction was so great that the consequences of the war are still felt today. In this video, I present a selection of photographs from World War II, each of which hides its own unique story. This image shows a man and his daughter eating rice among the ruins of their own home. The photograph was taken in February 1942 in Singapore after the city was heavily shelled and bombed. At that time, about 1 million civilians were in Singapore, all in extremely dire circumstances. The famous photograph, "Wait for Me, Daddy," was taken in 1940 by photographer Claude P. Detloff. It captures the farewell of 5-year-old Warren Bernard and his father, who was leaving for war as part of the British Columbia Regiment. This image became an iconic wartime symbol. It was used in propaganda, displayed in schools throughout British Columbia, and featured in war bond campaigns. Later, the soldiers, including the boy's father, participated in the Normandy landings. Interestingly, the photo appeared on Canadian coins and postage stamps. In this photograph, mothers standing on the platform lift their children to the train windows where their husbands were departing for the front. Families were trying to be together for as long as possible. This photograph shows a German soldier who returned to Frankfurt after the end of the war, only to find ruins where his home once stood. This moment illustrates the tragedy of thousands of families who lost their homes during the bombings. The Battle of Stalingrad, which lasted 200 days from the 16th of July 1942 to the 2nd of February 1943, was a turning point in the war. On the 23rd of August, the Germans reached the Volga and began bombing the city, killing more than 40,000 residents in a week. On the 19th of November, the Red Army launched a counteroffensive and surrounded the 330,000-strong enemy force. On the 2nd of February 1943, the encircled troops surrendered. War spares no one, not even the most defenseless. During the bombing of Warsaw, hospitals and orphanages suffered greatly. In September 1942, bombers attacked the areas of the Transfiguration of the Lord and Infant Jesus hospitals. Bombs fell on residential neighborhoods, destroying dozens of buildings. The city was almost completely leveled. Hundreds of civilians died from the barbaric bombings, many of them children. In April 1945, the Allies launched Operation Mana, a humanitarian mission to save the starving population of the Netherlands. From the 29th of April to the 8th of May, the British Royal Air Force delivered 6,680 tons of food, and the Americans another 4,000 tons. The operation began just in time, as by the end of April, the daily ration of residents had dropped to 230 kilocalories, and bread rations were only 200 grams per week. Supplies were dropped over Leiden, The Hague, Rotterdam, and Gouda. This operation helped save thousands of lives. During the bombings, military medics and Red Cross workers heroically rescued the wounded right in the streets. They worked under fire, in collapsed buildings, constantly risking their lives. Their deeds are a shining example of true humanity and dedication in wartime. Despite the danger, they continued to fulfill their duty, helping everyone in need. World War II caused one of the largest migration disasters in human history. About 60 million people were forced to leave their homes due to combat, bombings, occupation, and persecution. People fled from the fighting, searched for safe places to live, and tried to escape hunger and destruction. Many families were separated, and their way of life was completely destroyed. The mass displacement of populations affected nearly every country involved in the war. This photograph shows Joseph Stalin deep in thought about the next steps to suppress the enemy. On the 22nd of June, 1941, Germany attacked the USSR. At dawn, enemy aircraft began bombing cities and military targets along the western border. German troops attacked Soviet territory from the Barents Sea to the Black Sea. On the first day of the war, the enemy destroyed much of the Soviet equipment and gained air superiority. At noon, People's Commissar for Foreign Affairs Vyacheslav Molotov announced the invasion on the radio. Thus began the Great Patriotic War. During the Battle of Saipan, local residents hid in caves and jungles to escape the bombings. American soldiers used megaphones to urge them to come out, promising safety, but many remained in hiding. Some of the population were placed in a special camp, but many preferred to stay in natural shelters. Unfortunately, many caves were destroyed during the bombings, and survivors, like the mother and son in this photo, had to urgently find new hiding places. After the end of World War II, German women actively participated in the country's recovery. Due to the shortage of men, they carried out hard labor, clearing debris and cleaning streets. These women were called Trümmerfrauen. They formed human chains to clean roads and construction sites, collecting bricks and stones for reuse. The Battle of Peleliu, which began in September 1944, became one of the bloodiest battles for American forces during World War II. The United States Marine Corps and the 81st Infantry Division faced fierce Japanese resistance. Despite plans to quickly capture the island, fighting lasted for more than 2 months. The Americans lost over 6,000 soldiers. Capturing the island had strategic importance for subsequent operations in the Philippines and Okinawa. This photograph captures a woman showing a returned prisoner of war, a picture of her missing son. Like many other mothers, she hoped that someone among those who came home might know the fate of her child. This took place in Vienna in 1947, when a large-scale repatriation of prisoners of war to Austria began. By the end of the year, more than 55,000 Austrian citizens had been released from Soviet camps. The return of the prisoners was part of a broad program to rebuild post-war Austria and normalize relations with the USSR. This photograph shows the rescue of puppies from the rubble after a bombing in London. During the war, pets also became victims of the fighting. In London alone, more than 400,000 dogs and cats were killed. This high number of animal deaths was also due to authorities urging people to euthanize their pets because of food shortages. Nevertheless, some organizations, such as the Battersea Dogs Home, saved around 145,000 dogs. The surviving animals later helped people. Dogs searched for victims and cats fought rats, boosting the morale of the city's residents. This photo, taken in 1942, shows how difficult it was for German soldiers during the advance on the Caucasus. Poor roads and rugged mountain terrain made progress difficult. Ammunition and food supplies were constantly needed, and partisans disrupted these efforts. As a result, the offensive turned into slow, stop-and-go movement. German troops even had to use camels to transport cargo. For World War II soldiers, letters from home were true treasures. The soldiers carefully kept each message from loved ones, reread them during moments of calm, and carried them in their breast pockets. News from family and peaceful life gave hope for return, helped them stay strong, and sustained their belief in victory. During bombings, people tried to save elderly relatives by taking them to safe places. Due to a shortage of transportation, the elderly were moved on carts or even in baby strollers. Amid constant bombings and panic, every means of transport was invaluable, and people used anything they could to save their loved ones. During breaks between battles, many World War II soldiers sought comfort in prayer. Sometimes they entered abandoned or destroyed churches, where they could be alone with their thoughts and emotions. It didn't matter what faith the soldier belonged to. In those moments, everyone prayed for the same things: for the war to end soon, for their loved ones' safety, and for a return home. This photograph was taken by photographer Joe Rosenthal on the 23rd of February, 1945. It shows Ira Hayes, a Native American U.S. Marine who became one of the 6 servicemen who raised the American flag on Mount Suribachi on the island of Iwo Jima. This moment became a symbol of national heroism. Despite this, after the war, Ira Hayes, like many other soldiers, faced serious psychological problems. In 1955, at the age of 32, he died in complete solitude. A memorial in Arlington was created in his honor, and one of the peaks in the Sierra Estrella bears his name. This photograph shows a British soldier at the grave of an unknown soldier who died during air battles in North Africa. Many pilots were killed at that time. The losses were especially heavy among American soldiers. Out of 355 pilots of the Red Tails unit, 84 died in combat, and another 32 were captured or went missing. These pilots carried out dangerous missions escorting bombers and attacking ground targets. In March 1945, American photographer John Floria took pictures of 16-year-old Hans-Georg Henke, an anti-aircraft assistant who was captured by the American soldiers. In the photos, the young man is crying not out of fear, but from shock after his first battle. These images were published in Life magazine and became a symbol of the tragedy and horrors of war. During World War II, many teenagers found themselves at the front. In Germany, more than 2 million boys and girls were members of the Hitler Youth Organization. In the final years of the war, teenagers massively joined the ranks of the Waffen-SS and the Volkssturm. In other countries as well, there were cases of underage participation in combat. Many added years to their age in order to reach the front. Teenagers fought both in regular troops and in partisan units. This photograph captures a woman tearfully sending her son to war. The image was taken in 1941 during the Moscow defensive operation. At that time, many mothers said goodbye to their sons, losing hope of ever seeing them again. But things turned out differently. On the 1st of December, during the battle near Golitsino, the Germans broke through at the junction of the 5th and 33rd Armies, but were stopped by the 32nd Rifle Division near the village of Akulovo. The decisive battle took place near the village of Yushkovo, where German troops were defeated. The successful defense of Golitsino thwarted the enemy's final attempt to break through to Moscow. On the 8th of May 1945, soldiers of the 77th Infantry Division of the United States on the island of Okinawa listened to the radio broadcast announcing Germany's surrender. While Europe celebrated victory, American troops in the Pacific were still in the midst of fierce battles. The soldiers received the news with mixed emotions, joy over the end of the war in Europe, but also the realization that for them the war continued, and many hard battles with Japanese forces lay ahead. This photograph was taken in 1956, when the last German prisoners of war returned from the USSR. It captures the moment when a father reunites with his daughter, who last saw him 12 years ago, when she was just 1 year old. Although she did not remember him at all, the girl felt overwhelming joy and happiness that her father would be near again. This famous photograph from the Great Patriotic War is titled Combat. It was taken by Soviet photographer Max Alpert on the 12th of July 1942 near Voroshilovgrad, now Luhansk, during a fierce battle. The image shows a commander with a TT pistol calling his soldiers to advance. This shot became one of the most recognizable images of the wartime era and a symbol of the courage of Soviet officers. This photograph captures the surrender of a Japanese soldier to American Marines on the Marshall Islands. It was taken on the 2nd of February 1944 during combat operations when the 4th Marine Division of the United States was advancing on the islands. The surrender of a Japanese soldier was rare at the time, as Japanese military doctrine prohibited surrender. In occupied Netherlands, residents of small settlements secretly prayed for neighbors who had been captured by the Nazis. They knelt and asked God not for protection for themselves, but for the protection of others. Despite the risk of repression, people still found ways to support each other spiritually. In 1941, in response to the beginning of the genocide of the Jews, mass protests and strikes began in some countries. The resistance movement in Denmark was especially notable, where the population actively opposed Nazi policies. However, despite people's desire to stop this inhumanity, organizing such events was extremely difficult and dangerous due to the strict control imposed by the Nazi authorities. One of the most poignant war photographs shows United States Marine Corps Colonel Francis Fenton kneeling during the funeral of his son. Mike Fenton, a 19-year-old private first class, was killed on the 7th of May 1945 while repelling a Japanese counterattack near Shuri on Okinawa. Shortly before his death, father and son had a chance encounter near a ruined farmhouse, exchanged news, and never saw each other again. After receiving news of his son's death, Colonel Fenton came to the battlefield to say goodbye. The battles in the Pacific became historically known for their bloodshed. During this war, the United States lost more than 106,000 servicemen. At the same time, Japan's total losses amounted to more than 2,100,000 soldiers and about 800,000 civilians. After heavy fighting, many soldiers developed what became known as the 2,000-yard stare, a distant, unfocused gaze, as if a person were staring through space. This change is a psychological defense mechanism in response to war. The condition was later associated with post-traumatic stress disorder, which can affect anyone who has experienced severe psychological trauma. However, what soldiers saw and endured during any war is hardly comparable to any other form of stress. During the Bataan Death March in April 1942, American and Filipino prisoners of war had to carry their wounded comrades, even though they themselves were emaciated and suffering from various illnesses. The march stretched 97 kilometers from the southern tip of the Bataan Peninsula to the prisoner of war camp. The prisoners covered this distance in 6 days. During the march, the Japanese denied the captives food and water, and those who collapsed were either executed or left to die. Of the 70,000 prisoners, only 54,000 reached the camp. During the bombings of London, British soldiers and firefighters heroically rescued children from under the rubble of destroyed houses. For 8 months, the city was subjected to almost daily massive air raids. As a result, many buildings were destroyed. The number of casualties, including children, reached into the thousands. Nevertheless, military and rescue personnel risked their lives under the threat of new bombings to save children. In 1942, Red Army troops were liberating villages occupied by the Germans. In one such village, they discovered a girl captured in this photograph. The child was frightened and had lost her parents, so the soldiers could not help but care for her. They comforted the girl and gave her food. The German command seriously underestimated the harshness of the Russian winter, and Wehrmacht soldiers found themselves near Leningrad without proper winter gear. Due to the lack of winter lubricants, weapons and equipment frequently failed. During the winter of 1941 to 1942, the Wehrmacht lost about 100,000 soldiers who died from frostbite and illnesses related to hypothermia. The battle for Omaha Beach on the 6th of June 1944 became one of the bloodiest episodes of the Normandy landings. Out of 30,000 American soldiers, 3,000 were killed. Despite heavy enemy fire, lack of cover, and huge losses among the command staff, American soldiers continued to fight. In the first 10 minutes of battle, many officers and sergeants were killed or wounded. Many injured soldiers kept fighting and encouraged others. By 10 o'clock in the morning, about 300 soldiers had broken through the obstacles and climbed the coastal embankment, continuing the advance inland. Only by evening, thanks to the courage and resilience of American troops, was the area cleared of enemy forces. This photo captures a recruit saying goodbye to his family in 1943 near Kursk. The Kursk salient saw one of the largest battles of the Great Patriotic War. More than 4 million people, thousands of tanks, aircraft, and artillery participated on both sides. Soviet forces not only repelled a massive enemy offensive, but launched a counter-offensive, which became a turning point in the war. Henryk Goldschmidt, better known as Janusz Korczak, was a Polish educator, writer, and physician. In 1911, he founded the Orphans' Home for Jewish Children in Warsaw. In the shelter, he implemented a system of children's self-government with a friendly court and public voting. In 1942, Korczak died in the Treblinka concentration camp along with his pupils, refusing the offered chance to save himself. A photograph taken in 1942 near Ivangorod captured one of the most terrifying moments of the Holocaust: the execution of civilians by an Einsatzgruppe. In the image, a German soldier aims a rifle at a woman who is trying to shield a child with her body. This shot became an important historical document confirming the crimes of the Nazis and one of the most piercing testimonies of all the horrors of war. In 1940, the SS formed the 36th Division under the command of Oskar Dirlewanger. It consisted of criminals. Dirlewanger hoped to re-educate them through military service. However, despite the commander's hopes, the unit became one of the most brutal punitive formations involved in mass executions of civilians. By 1942, thieves, murderers, and rapists were included in the division. This unit operated until the end of the war. Lepa Radic joined a partisan unit in 1941 after the occupation of Yugoslavia. Still a teenager, she worked as a nurse and led propaganda activities among the youth. In February 1943, while accompanying refugees, she was captured by the Germans. After 3 days of torture, she was sentenced to public hanging. Even before her death, the girl refused to betray the partisans and gave an inspiring speech calling the people to fight for freedom. In 1940, Polish officer Witold Pilecki voluntarily infiltrated the Auschwitz concentration camp under the name Tomasz Serafiński to document all the horrors taking place there. Inside the camp, he created an underground organization called the Union of Military Organization, transmitting information about Nazi crimes. After 3 years in the camp, he managed to escape and report to the Allies about the mass extermination system. But his warnings were not taken seriously. Unfortunately, instead of becoming a hero, Pilecki was betrayed by his own country. In 1948, he was executed by the authorities of Poland. These photographs depict Alfred Zeck, a German boy who became known for receiving the Iron Cross Second Class from Adolf Hitler at the age of 12. In 1945, during the defense of his hometown of Goldenau, he defied his mother's ban and used a cart to evacuate 12 wounded German soldiers under fire. For this feat, he was awarded the highest military honor. After the award, Zeck continued to serve and was wounded in battle. He was taken prisoner but was released in 1947. Christina Skarbek was an agent of the British Special Operations Executive. She carried out secret missions in Hungary, Poland, and France, worked in Egypt, and organized the work of secret couriers. In January 1941, Skarbek was captured by the Gestapo in Budapest. To save herself, she bit her tongue until it bled and pretended to be in the final stage of tuberculosis. The Germans, fearing infection, quickly got rid of the sick woman. Immediately after her release, Christina and her partner Andrzej Ciwerski were transported to Romania in the trunk of a diplomatic car. Despite her heroism and many awards, after the war, Skarbek lived in poverty. In 1952, she was tragically killed by a rejected admirer. In Nazi concentration camps, roll calls of prisoners were held daily, lasting for hours in any weather. Any minor violation was met with severe punishment. In addition, all new arrivals were examined by SS doctors. This was called selection. They decided who would go to work and who would go straight to the gas chambers. This procedure was particularly brutal in death camps, where most new inmates were immediately killed. During selection, the Nazis paid no attention to family ties and mercilessly separated children from their parents. During the Nanking Massacre, Japanese soldiers massively executed Chinese prisoners of war. Thousands of captured soldiers were loaded into trucks, taken to the outskirts of the city, and shot. Japanese soldiers tied the prisoners' hands, lined them up in columns, and opened fire. They carefully checked that everyone was dead. If they found a living Chinese prisoner, they finished him off. One of the largest massacres took place on the 18th of December on the banks of the Yangtze River, where the Japanese shot more than 57,000 prisoners with machine guns. This photograph shows a woman leading her children after Nazi soldiers separated her from her husband. Upon arrival at Auschwitz, families were immediately split. Men were sent to separate barracks and assigned to hard labor. Women and children were placed elsewhere and also subjected to forced labor. Very often, women and children were immediately sent to the gas chambers as they were considered weak and useless. The Nazis carefully disguised the process of extermination in Auschwitz. Arriving Jews were told they were going for disinfection and a bath. Signs reading "bathhouse" and "for disinfection" were placed on the doors, creating the illusion of a safe place. Moreover, containers with the poisonous gas Zyklon B were delivered by vehicles of the German Red Cross. This created the false impression of medical assistance and further lulled the vigilance of those doomed to death. This photograph, preserved at the Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum, became one of the symbols of children's suffering in concentration camps. It depicts Czesława Kłoka. On the 12th of December 1942, she and her mother were deported from the Polish city of Zamość to Auschwitz. In the camp, Czesława was forcibly photographed for camp records by photographer Wilhelm Brasa. He later recalled that the girl was very frightened and did not understand what was wanted from her. Before the photo, she wiped away tears and blood from a split lip. Czesława Kłoka was killed by poison injection on the 12th of March 1943 at the age of 14. Roger Godfrey was one of the few who survived the horrific tragedy in Oradour-sur-Glane on the 10th of June, 1944. At the time, he was only 9 years old. When the SS appeared at his school, only Roger disobeyed their orders. Thanks to this decision, he managed to escape and thus saved himself from death. That day, the Nazis killed 642 villagers. They shot the men and burned them in barns, while the women and children were locked in a church which was then set on fire. Only a few people survived. Besides Roger, 47-year-old Marguerite Ruffanche managed to escape by jumping out of a church window, along with 5 other men who broke free from the flames despite their injuries. This photograph, titled Memory, was taken by photographer Anatoly Grakhov in 1966. It shows a war invalid who had lost his limbs at the eternal flame. The image gained recognition at an international competition in Amsterdam, where it won 3 awards. On the 7th of May 1945, at Dam Square in Amsterdam, German soldiers opened fire on civilians who had gathered to celebrate the end of the war. The shooting began after one captured German soldier refused to surrender and opened fire. German troops in the Groot Club building fired machine guns for about 2 hours. As a result, 32 people were killed and more than 100 were injured. In memory of the victims, memorial stones and a commemorative plaque were installed in the square. During World War II, Allied soldiers often provided medical aid to wounded enemies, including SS fighters. These acts demonstrate the observance of international law, which states that all wounded individuals have the right to receive assistance. There are known cases where American and Soviet medics treated wounded German soldiers, prioritizing saving lives over ideological differences. During World War II, prisoners in Japanese and German POW camps were deliberately given critically small amounts of food. For example, in the Japanese Stanley internment camp, a family of babies received only a bowl of rice and a plate of soup. In German camps, prisoners were given about 300 to 350 grams of bread and porridge, significantly less than 600 calories. Despite this, the captives were forced to perform hard labor while living in complete unsanitary conditions. These photographs show Kazimiera Mika, a 12-year-old girl who witnessed tragedy during the bombing of a Warsaw suburb on the 13th of September 1939. That day, she went to dig potatoes with her 14-year-old sister, Andrzej Kostovich. At that moment, German planes appeared into the skies. During the air raid, 2 aircraft dropped bombs and opened machine gun fire on civilians. A fragment hit Andrzej in the back, killing her. Kazimiera stayed by her sister's body, not understanding why she wasn't responding. This tragic moment was captured by photographer Julian Bryan. During World War II, gas mask drills with school children were common in the United Kingdom. Authorities took population protection seriously and regularly organized such exercises. Tear gas was used to test effectiveness. All children were required to always carry gas masks, as all countries feared the possibility of chemical attacks following World War I. These images show the aftermath of the tragedy in the Japanese city of Hiroshima. On the 6th of August 1945, the American B-29 bomber Enola Gay dropped the atomic bomb Little Boy, weighing 4 tons, on the city. The explosion had a yield of 20,000 tons of TNT. About 80,000 people died instantly. The city was almost completely destroyed. In the following years, the death toll rose due to radiation sickness and other long-term effects. Hiroshima was chosen because of its flat geography and abundance of wooden buildings, which ensured maximum destruction. Survivors recalled a bright flash of light followed by a devastating blast wave. During World War II, Japanese soldiers kidnapped about 200,000 women from Korea, China, the Philippines, and other occupied territories. They were forcibly taken to so-called comfort stations, military brothels. Girls and women were kidnapped from homes, streets, or lured with false promises of employment. Most of the victims were teenage girls aged 15 to 17. The Japanese government denied the scale of the crimes for a long time, although archival documents confirm the existence of this system of sexual slavery. This photograph shows the moment of return of Japanese Corporal Shoichi Yokoi, who hid in the jungles of Guam for 28 years. In 1944, after Japanese forces were defeated, he fled into the jungle to avoid capture. He built a camouflaged cave and survived by eating wild animals. Yokoi didn't know the war had ended and was too afraid to leave his shelter. Only in January 1972 was he discovered by hunters and finally returned home. This photograph shows a family with their dog trying to flee from unknown explosions. The picture was taken at Pearl Harbor on the 7th of December 1941. On that day, Japanese aircraft and submarines attacked the American naval base. During the 2-hour assault, 4 battleships, 1 cruiser, 2 destroyers, and 188 aircraft were destroyed. More than 2,400 American servicemen were killed. The Japanese lost 29 planes and 64 men. This attack led to the United States entering World War II. This photograph shows a Soviet girl after being liberated from the Dachau concentration camp. Her face reflects the horror that prisoners of this dreadful place had to endure. Her gaze is completely empty and her body was emaciated to the point where only skin and bones remained. During the Battle of Saipan, American soldiers endured immense psychological pressure. Constant fighting in harsh conditions, clearing fortified caves, and facing desperate enemy resistance led to severe and nervous exhaustion. Many soldiers experienced extreme emotional stress, sometimes fainting or showing signs of combat trauma. These psychological wounds stayed with them for the rest of their lives. And that's all from me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon. Your support means the world to me. It's the best reward I could ask for. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.